So in today's market, it's much different than what we've seen in the past with real estate market cycles, and actually is a black swan, which leads a lot of people to ask, what does the commercial real estate sector look like moving forward? Today we have Glenn Mueller from the University of Denver School of Business, the Franklin L. Burns School of Real Estate and Construction Management, who's a full professor at the university. Glenn, thanks for being here today.
All right. Thank you, JJ. Really happy to be here and talking with you.
Okay, fantastic. So as I said, I mean, you're the foremost expert for real estate market cycles. And today is definitely something that we could not anticipate whatsoever. And you do a great job with the market monitor, the Miller Market Monitor that you put out on a quarterly basis. But today's much different, right? It's much different than anything we've seen before. And 4 months ago, deals were being done in a traditional fashion, and then all of a sudden the debt markets just locked up, and then also people stopped pulling back on investment. So what do you see today compared to what you've seen in the past?
Sure. Well, it's actually very interesting in the fact that I almost see it as a tale of two different property types. Any property type that is servicing an essential business or an essential need is doing well, and those that were basically required to be shut down by the government obviously have major problems. So you want to start at the bottom and work our way up, or start at the top and work our way down?
Let's start at the bottom and work our way up.
Okay, great. So my theory has always been that real estate is just a delayed mirror of the economy. If the economy is doing well, real estate's going to do well. And the economy all the way up through February was booming. We hit the longest economic expansion, started in in August of 2019. So it was like, isn't there going to be a recession? Isn't there going to be a recession? We've never gone this long before. And the answer was, outside of a black swan event for the past year, I'm saying outside of a black swan event, it looks like everything's doing well because we were growing at a nice moderate rate and things were looking good. And then along comes a major black swan event. And interesting, I made one mistake. I never looked back far enough at cycles. And what I found looking back into history, we had the plague in 1740. We had cholera in 1819. We had the Spanish flu in 1919. And then we have the coronavirus. So basically every 100 years, we get a pandemic. And it's happened every century for the past 4 centuries. And it creates a change. This time around, we're really lucky that we've got technology so we can still talk and do things. And hopefully we come to a some kind of antidote here, vaccine that will let us go back to normal. But if we don't, we're going to have some changes in our lives, just like we did after 9/11. I remember running for planes, from the parking lot and getting there in 5 minutes. Now you got to go through security. So, we're adding extra complexity to our lives as we go along. The first thing to shut down right out of the box, obviously, was hotels. People stopped traveling, and hotel occupancies went from the highest they've ever been. Hotel occupancies historically have averaged around 64%. We are running in the mid 70s, higher than we've ever seen, since we started collecting data. And some hotels totally shut down, some didn't. But right now, depending upon the sector, we're at somewhere between 25 and 45% occupancy. The hotels along the highways where you can still drive are doing fairly well, but basically a lot are shut down. I sit on the board of a small fund, and in that fund, they literally called up the lender and said, that we're not making we shut the hotel down, that we're not going to make our mortgage payment next month. And the lender said, yeah, we figured that was the case. Thanks for the call. So hotels are now starting to reopen. and we'll see how much people are willing to travel, or how quickly that picks up. Air travel has started to recover a little bit. Got a son who's a pilot with United, and planes are now flying at 70% capacity. They cut off 90% of the flights now, and many were flying with next to nobody. Now they're flying at 70% capacity, leaving that middle seat open. So basically the planes are full based on the distancing stuff. So interesting to see that starting to come back already. Excuse me. The next sector would be retail. Tons of retail just shut down. Restaurants, I think, the hardest hit. Essentially, retail is booming, and I fortunately I can't sit still. I'm in the process of rehabbing a summer home to be able to be near my grandkids, and I'm in Home Depot, Lowe's, that kind of thing, pretty much every day. Some of them require masks, some don't, but they stayed open and were busy. And every time I talk to a manager, they go, I'm meeting my normal numbers or better every day. So some retail is booming. Walmart is booming. They're all looking to expand. They've all added extra warehouse space, but restaurants closed, malls closed. So we know that malls were in the process of going through this big change anyway, from selling of dry goods and that kind of thing with, Macy's, May D&F, and all the big general retailers like that, to more experiential retail like larger food courts, escape rooms, theaters, that kind of thing. So to me, malls were sort of becoming the downtown of the suburbs, and they completely shut down. Coming back with the whole distancing thing, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. To me, retail constantly is going through creative destruction. New comes along, kills off the next one. Internet retail has been obviously through the roof. We got a lot of people that hadn't tried buying online who now are almost forced to do so. And so my understanding is that both Amazon and Walmart, the two biggest online retailers, are both had sales volume very similar to the Black Friday through Christmas season timing. So, and as you know, the market's up today because of the 17% jump in retail sales.
So what when you say what would be the essential retail? You've got the Home Depot, you got the Walmarts, right? You got pharmacy, CVS, Walgreens.
Right. Pharmacies, food, liquor was considered essential.
Yep.
And so all of them have been doing very well, and looking to expand. More people started buying groceries online, right. So it'll be interesting to see whether that concept continues, or they were doing it just to be safe and they don't like it. My wife's never going to buy produce online, period, paragraph. She's going to check it out and pick it up herself. Could we do some other things? Yeah. Did we get into that routine? No. So it's really, I think that's it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure that there was an uptick, and so the plane will be a little higher. Whether it stays there or settles back down is kind of a question.
Well, one of the things that I found very interesting is that 6 months ago I'm talking to people or some other families, and they're asking me questions. I'm like, retail is a great place to go. Cap rates are at a great some of them are 8, 9, 10%, and as long as you have like lifestyle businesses in there, then you should be in pretty good shape, right? Because you can't get a cup of coffee online, you can't get a haircut online. Gyms was another thing if you wanted to go to exercise, to have the whole facility. Well, today, that's, now I think that the language is just going to change to is it essential retail, right? I would think that now from an acquisition perspective, investment perspective, that there might be a shift to, because that would allow you to, or have a combination of both, right? That would be essential and lifestyle. That could go through something like the black swan event that we're currently in.
Right, right. So next would be office. Obviously, a lot of people can't go to the office, but office is a long-term lease. Companies didn't just shut down. The only people really hurt with that was WeWork, where they're renting by the day,
Yep.
and all of a sudden all their clients are gone. Although they signed 15-year leases on everything they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that survives or not, and that concept, any landlord, any owner of any building could do the exact same thing, and many of them have. Many of the publicly traded REITs have started little departments that are doing short-term lease work and stuff like that, just like we work. So, and everybody going, well, so now aren't more people going to work at home? And so we won't need as much office space. The answer at the moment is, the firm I do work with, Black Creek Group, I have two teams, the green team and the blue team. And the green team came in for the first 2 weeks, and the blue team had to work at home. And this Monday, the blue team took over and is working there. So now you're in for 2 weeks and out for 2 weeks, and they set the space up with the correct 6-foot distancing and all the other things going on. They're using all the space. So to me, while you may get some more people working at home, the extra space you're going to need distances you out such that we're going to go from what historically has been 200 square feet per in office usage to 400 square feet per person. Keep that distance correct. Unless and obviously private office is a little bit of a different thing. But, we had been squeezing people in. When I started my first job, I was in a 6x6 cubicle. Mm-hmm. And you've seen it with Wall Street people, et cetera. Now they've got them 3 feet apart at desks with just computer screens in front of them. So that's right. 3 foot apart's going to go away, and that's going to jump to every other. So now we're going to space it back out again from that standpoint. So I think office, we're going to see a lot of reconfiguration of space as to how it's used. Maybe we would go back to the older style. Everybody gets an office, a private office.
Right.
My sister-in-law, who's the head district attorney for Winnebago County in Wisconsin, she's been going to work every day because she's got a private office. Mm-hmm. And so does everybody else. They don't go into court, though. They do court online with Zoom, right? But she literally goes to her office and doesn't have to walk, down the hall to go to the courtroom. Now she just does everything from her office.
Right.
And that obviously ends up taking more time. Pretty much everybody I've talked to says working from home actually takes more time.
Really? Why? Now, why would that be?
Because just getting on and getting things set up. I mean, you and I, when we started this Zoom meeting,
right?
Us, I haven't been to a Zoom meeting that doesn't take at least 10 or 15 minutes before everybody's on and it's all ready. And you get so a 10 o'clock start really means you're going to actually start doing stuff at 10:15.
Right.
And just the use of things, copy machine, whatever you're doing. There's a little difference. Oh, I needed to talk to someone. I called them. They weren't there instead of walking over to their desk. I can tell you that I know most of the admin staff that I work with, they've all gone, especially the younger millennial ones, I don't want to work there. This sucks.
Yeah.
I'm lonely. I'm worried about my boss not seeing enough of me.
Right.
All kind of stuff. So people are social animals. And I don't think that's going to change.
Well, the other day too is Sam Zoe. I saw Sam Zoe actually speak on an iGlobal event, and he said something that really resonated, which I thought was pretty funny. He goes, "I don't know anybody that can manage by modem," and that was very interesting to me. Right.
So I think Office does well. Some cost potentially for reconfiguration, but I think that kind of hangs in there. Apartments, people have to have some place to live. I just finished teaching. We went from teaching in the classroom to teaching online. I've done it before, so it wasn't a big change for me. But I can tell you that University of Denver did a survey of students. 90% of them said they really wanted to be back in the classroom. Mm-hmm. 90%. And so again, we're looking at, What do we do with the existing classrooms? Every other seat gets them far enough apart potentially, which means that we can't fill a classroom. So again, maybe we've got the green and the blue team. Green team comes to school on Monday, blue team comes on Wednesday, and they go back and they participate online the other time. Universities have been hit too because
Right.
students aren't there. And part of the university's revenue is room and board and all the activities, right? So, I heard that some universities are getting sued by students for asking for a refund on the activity fees for the activities they didn't get to do.
Mm-hmm.
So apartments, and rental housing, obviously you got to be someplace. So I don't think that got hurt. Class A has done well because those are the white collar workers who are working from home and still getting paid. Class C wasn't a problem initially. Apartment rental collections is a new stat that's being collected. And the average has been staying at or above 90%, which is great.
Yeah, but how much is that, Glenn, from, because the biggest concern that I have is that you're getting all the stimulus money, right, from the CARES Act that's coming in, that people can actually make their payments. When that stops and all these people that were working in retail that doesn't exist anymore, and businesses aren't gonna open up again, isn't there a good chance that we could really start seeing those non-payments happen here?
Right. Well, and that's where, like I say, again, kind of a tale of two markets. The high-end stuff, I think where the white-collar workers are does well. The lower-end stuff, obviously, everyone was surprised that the rent collections were as good as they were, but it was because of the government payments.
Mm-hmm.
And those are gone. There is that potential problem. So I think that is that's a major risk there in Class C apartments.
And so sorry to cut you off, but do you see that there being buying opportunities in multifamily from a distress perspective then? Fannie Freddie, like 28,000 people that had more loans, they were able to give some leniency to, right?
Right.
But do you see that apartments could actually be a place where it would be, considered or going toward distress?
Sure. Yes. Like I say, once the government subsidies are gone, then we start to see what the new normal is, and things start to wash out from that standpoint. I was going to do it kind of in a sequence of just talking about fundamental demand first and then go on to pricing. But what we're already seeing in the marketplace from a pricing standpoint is if you have a high quality Class A property, and I'm now talking about all property types, deals are still closing at basically the same cap rate. Okay. If you got to deal with any kind of hair or question on it at all, the deal has either been postponed,
Mm-hmm.
or renegotiated, or terminated. Mm-hmm. So there has been that. So the deal volume has dropped well more than in half at this point. But high end good stuff, institutional quality, if you will, still seems to be closing and doing okay. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out. We're only in, if you will, the first full quarter of all this stuff happening. And, unemployment was up substantially, employment down. When does that turn around? Do we actually start to see employment after all these people getting laid off? Do we start to see positive numbers in the third quarter? Of course, it's, from a bottom, so it's kind of a dead cat bounce potential there. Does it really start into the third quarter with things picking up? We'll see. So yeah, so apartments, are good quality apartments doing well. And again, as a matter of fact, we'll get to one other thing, and maybe this is actually the perfect time to do it because we just talked about office and apartments. One very interesting question that we've been discussing is what's going to happen in the big cities. It used to be that as they call them, the gateway cities, New York, Boston, San Francisco, LA, Chicago. They were gateway cities. That's where you saw the largest amount of foreign investment going in, because foreigners wanted to be in the big name cities, et cetera, et cetera. When you have a drivable city like Denver is, we only got light rail, about a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
You and I, if we were working downtown, could still commute to downtown reasonably well.
Mm-hmm.
But in New York City, let's face it, 80% of those people take public transportation.
Mm-hmm.
Social distance in what used to be you couldn't ride, you almost can't ride a subway in New York City without touching someone.
Correct.
Alone being 6 feet away from them.
And then you're grabbing the bar and everything
Right.
else, right?
Right.
There's a lot.
Right. So how does that change? I guess if you're close enough around now, the e-bikes have become the big popular thing, right? It's basically an electric motor scooter, and they can do 20 miles an hour. So, getting around that way has become a lot more popular. I can name 5 friends who've just recently purchased them just to get around town. So all of a sudden, do the second tier cities like a Denver, a Kansas City, a Salt Lake City, et cetera, become a more popular destination? Hey, if I'm able to function and do my job from home or not from the office, why not let me do it from a city I prefer to live in instead of New York, or what the case may be? Although, we assumed that would happen after 9/11, and it didn't take but 6 months before New York was back and booming again as well. So it'd be interesting to see whether there is any short or long-term change from that perspective. And then the top performing property type obviously has been industrial.
Yep.
Like I say, demand has gone through the roof, not only for big bulk warehouses, as every retailer is trying to expand and do more and more online. They have to if they want to survive. That's been in gear for close to a decade now. This just accelerated that. And then the last mile distribution, having it close in, has been the big thing going forward. The challenge there is it's not like an industrial park where you just go, okay, there's some space, go do it. If you want to be close in, that means you're around residential, and people want warehouses near, or shopping centers for that matter, where they live. So now all of a sudden, we're going to take the empty shopping centers, turn them into warehouses, close-in distribution warehouses, and will the citizens accept, traffic jams of Amazon trucks driving up and down the streets and that kind of thing?
Right.
So, but industrial, has been the best performing property type for the past 3 years, will continue to be so this year. The only other things that have done any better are, there are some data center REITs, that basically, have a place where everybody puts their servers for computing stuff, and the cell tower REITs have been the two, unique specialty types in real estate that have done well. So it's all about demand, and demand comes from employment, and we just had this big back off in employment and a total shutdown of something. Restaurants have started to reopen with outdoor stuff, et cetera. They all seem to be pretty full. People are super excited to get back out. And does that create a rise in the pandemic or not is really the question. It's amazing to me that it's so simple to wear a mask, right, and wash your hands, and yet you see tons of people not doing it.
So do you see? So two things I want to touch on here. So, what type of recovery do you think is going to happen? Some people said it was going to be a V recovery. Some said a U recovery. Some start getting out even longer. Now, I understand that. I think in the next couple of weeks, we're really going to find out the extent of this, because of all of the protesting that's been going on, hundreds of thousands of people, right? That's been in confined spaces, to see what type of impact that has. But based upon what we know today, what type of recovery do you think that the real estate sector would see?
Right. Well, as you know, I'm not an economist. I have a PhD in real estate. I use economic information to do my analysis work. And all the economists that I'm reading when it started, I would say the majority were V-shape. As we went in 3 to 4 weeks, they all switched over to U-shape. And now I'm seeing a trickle of some coming back with, oh, it looks like it's going to be V-shape, because as soon as something does open, everybody's excited about it and goes to it. Hence, the big jump in retail sales as the malls are reopening and that type of thing. So, being an optimist, I'm hoping for the V-shape. It's a challenge to kind of figure it out. It definitely V-shape if we get a vaccine, right? I think we just see an explosion in everything, in commerce and sales and everything, once we've got a vaccine figured out. And that's the question, is when is that? So if that doesn't come till, January of next year, the rest of this year, it's a U, right? Before it takes back off, but we'll see.
So
I've seen this little spike already in retail sales.
right. So when I started, we were working on a couple of projects ourselves, and all of a sudden talking to all these families, everybody started pulling back on in real estate investments like you were talking about before. And that was one of the main reasons they were really focusing on their equities portfolio, because they were not only seeing a lot of changes happening within the market, but also opportunities that were coming up. I think an overlooked area of opportunity, especially like what we went through, what we're going through now, is in the public REIT sector. And that's an area that I think there's been a tremendous amount of upside. What did you see, and what have you been seeing within the public REITs?
Sure. Well, and again, being the largest and most sophisticated real estate owners and operators in the world, they're all working really hard to figure out how to keep themselves afloat and everything else. As things started to turn down, most of them have a line of credit that they can draw on to buy properties with and do that kind of stuff. A number of large companies that didn't even have a deal in the pipeline drew down their lines of credit. So they had cash on hand, which means that they're now, they now have this loan outstanding. Why did you do that if you don't have something to buy? And they went, well, we don't want the banks to turn around tomorrow and go, oh, we decided that we're canceling your line of credit. They said, a great opportunity comes along, we want to have that cash ready. And also, if we have an operating problem, we want the cash there to be able to bridge us through that downside. So, and just, I'm going to use simple numbers. As opposed to picking individual stocks, which which is hard for me because of having my securities licenses. You have to ask permission 30 days ahead of time before you buy, and all this kind of stuff. I can buy, mutual funds where you buy into all of it, and the easiest one is Vanguard's REIT ETF, which is a ticker symbol VNQ. So that's something that's how I watch the REIT market. I just watch VNQ. So back in 2015, I was buying VNQ at $75 a share. Okay. In February, it almost hit 100, and I said, okay, if it hits 100, I'm gonna lighten up a little bit here. It got to 99.5, and then Corona hit. It dropped to 58.
Wow.
And it bounced back to 78, bounced down to 60, bounced back up. It hit 85 last week. It was back down to 70 earlier this week. And I haven't looked at it today yet, but since the market just, it's getting this bounce back today, it's currently at 83 and a half. So the volatility in the stock market has been really wild, and, playing the price swing, I used to do that when I had the time, playing a 10% price swing one year, I did it 3 times and made a ton of money, right? So 30% just by waiting for it to go up 10%, selling it, putting in the limit order to buy 10% down when it goes, and the next day put in the limit order to sell it back again, and just did that 3 times in a year. And we're getting that kind of volatility in the market today. To me, the stock market has always been run by emotion in the short term, but should be logical over the long term. So, it's where we are. Bond market, obviously at hands down historic all-time price highs because of low interest rates. 10-year treasuries are at the lowest in not even our lifetime, in history, right? A 10-year treasury sub 1%.
Right.
That's incredible. So if people are looking for yield, real estate's where you're getting, like you say, a cap rate of, super high quality A stuff for, B and C, 8, 9, 10% rates of return. REIT dividends were running around 4. When their prices drop, you're talking dividends of 8 or 9. Many of them, Congress gave them a special deal where they could cut their dividends and not pay. Remember, a REIT has to pay out 90% of its taxable income. Hotel REITs obviously shut down because they've got no income. So it's a very interesting time. They own good quality properties, and if management's smart, eventually it'll come back. And it's a question of how long you want to wait for that to happen, right? I think we see any REIT that didn't have good fundamental financial structure and properties gets taken private or consumed by another REIT here in the next, year or two as well. Anytime you have a problem, it really shows as to how well or poorly management does. And I think, all the family offices, if they're managing their own properties, they're working really hard. My company, Black Creek, our managers are just out there making sure that they're talking to every tenant. How are you doing? How can we help you survive? My new book called The Educated REIT Investor that comes out in August. My co-author, Stephanie Kelly, is the investor relations person for corporate office properties. Probably the best surviving office REIT during this pandemic. Why? Because 52% of all their leases are to the U.S. government. They specialize in leasing. The government doesn't own every building they're in. So they're in, D.C., and they're actually in Colorado Springs because of the Air Force and stuff like that. They lease to the government, and then they lease to all the consulting firms and other firms that service the government agencies, because after 9/11, a government employee can't come see you in your office unless your office meets the 9/11 code with the bomb-resistant class and all that kind of stuff. So corporate office builds to the 9/11 standard for not only the government, but for all these consultants and other companies that service the government, so that government employees can come to their office. They have like 2% of all their leases are retail, and basically it's the restaurant or the little gift shop or whatever that's on the main floor of the office building. They made a decision 5 days in. They basically personally called every one of those retail tenants and said, we're giving you 3 months free rent. We don't want you to go under. We don't want you to close. If you have to close, but don't worry about paying rent for 3 months. We know that you have other bigger issues than that. We want you to stay. Small peanut change for them.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Well, yeah, and it keeps from a loyalty perspective. So just a couple more things, Glenn. So, as you know, we've been talking about the having a relationship between the Family Office Real Estate Institute and actually having it housed at the Franklin L. Burns School of Real Estate and Construction Management. Definitely a lot of families that have had an interest that I've spoken to about education for not only currently, if they didn't make their money in real estate, but also future generations as well. You've seen the same thing, right, from people that have contacted you or families that have an interest in understanding more, correct?
Right. Oh, and to be perfectly honest, we have always had many students who come from real estate families come to get educated, to go back and help run the family business, and or wealthy families who, as a matter of fact, I can name 5 grad students right off my hand who wealthy family made their money in whatever. They now have a real estate portfolio. They really want a family member as opposed to someone else to be managing it. And so they come back and they get their grad degree with us in real estate to be able to help manage that. So yeah, I think it's going to be an amazing, joint venture here because we do so much in exec ed and continuing education stuff, and honing that or refining that in to help family offices is going to be very easy. As you know, I've been working in the institutional marketplace since 1990 when I went to work for Prudential Real Estate Investors when they were the largest real estate investor in the country. Mm-hmm. And my biggest client was CalPERS, California Public Employees Retirement System. Of their $390 billion in investments, they've got a 12% allocation to real estate. So they got $42 billion in real estate, and they buy and they own it, but they hired Prudential and Jones Lang LaSalle and all the other big operators to actually buy it and manage it for them. They don't have their own team. As a matter of fact, I think the only state that does it themselves is Ohio. Ohio actually hired all the people to actually buy and manage and invest in real estate directly.
Right. Well, that's definitely an area that I'm very excited about, because I think there's definitely a demand, and I really see the Institute at the Burns School to be the prominent program for family offices in real estate. So, Glenn, I know that you're away for the summer, but I really want to appreciate taking the time to talk about this. The number one thing that families want to know is, where are we in the real estate cycle? And there's nobody else that I can think of any better than you to answer these questions. And I really appreciate your time, and looking forward to additional conversations as we go.
Right. And as you know, my cycle report is in Core Magazine for everybody to take a look at. And happy to answer any questions that anyone might have too.
Fantastic. And we'll have some information if people want to get in touch as well.
Okay. Thanks so much.
All right.
Appreciate it, DJ.
All right. Thanks, Glenn.
Right. Have a blessed day.
Bye-bye.